guys, good morning. Welcome to the Two Moms Zero Attention Span podcast. I'm Jess.
I'm Allison.
Where we talk about our parents, our parenting, and everything in between. Today, we are going to talk about kids and lying. So let's jump right into it. So I remember you saying, Allison, that you lied all the time. Actually, this is how I found your page, was the video where you were talking about as a teenager, you lied all the time.
I did. It kind of gradually started, like once you know you're going to get yelled at for something, it doesn't really open up the doorway for you to feel comfortable talking to your parents. And it just kind of got progressively worse into my teen years. And I started knowing how to manipulate my parents into getting them to allow me to do what I want. Because if I said, hey, I want to do this, I knew they weren't going to let me. So I just said, hey, can I go over my friend Christine's house? But I was really going somewhere else. And it just progressed. And literally all I did was lie to my parents. And I did feel really bad about it, but it was better than the reaction from my parents for what I really wanted to do, which were fair things. It wasn't like I was asking anything crazy. It's just, they like to say no.
And I think that's what you were talking about in your video, is that your parents were very reactive. They
Yes.
were very controlling. And because of that, you felt like you didn't have a lot of choices as a teenager, because and the other thing is too, is if you're going to get in trouble either way,
Right.
if most things are going to get you in trouble, you might as well lie and take a chance on getting out of trouble in the first place.
Yeah, especially when it works 5 out of 10 times. I have a 50-50 shot at not getting caught and doing whatever. I think it was, my parents were really trying to do what they thought was best for me. I know my parents love me. I know that they were trying to do their best, but what they really did was create this dynamic between us where it was them against me. That's how it felt. So, anything I wanted to do, I kind of had to make up a story. And I found looking back now, I even did that when I didn't need to. I would even lie and make things up when I didn't need to, because I was in that habit of lying to them and trying to get my way on things.
Yeah. And what's funny too is that one of the things that I was talking about is that I didn't really lie to my parents. And that's something that people say all the time about kids with gentle parenting is, oh, what did your parents do during this? What did your parents do during that, during teenage years? Assuming that I was always lying or sneaking out or doing all the things that teenagers do. And I really wasn't. I wasn't doing those things. And the truth, and when I was growing up, my mom was never reactive. Like I could tell her anything. And even if now I know, like in her head, she was reacting quite a bit to some of the things I was telling her,
Yeah.
And I remember you were saying, even like last week, you said to your daughter was like, you were like, girl, what are you thinking? Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure she did that all the time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I do that now with my teenagers. Sometimes I would say about 95% of the time I react how I want to now, but it's taken me a long time. But once in a while, they'll come to me with something. I'm just like, girl, what? I mean, say that again. Like, I'm just so... But I apologized for that. I said, I'm sorry I overreacted. It just really shocked me. I said, I didn't react right. And I want to hear you out. Do you want to talk about it again? And we talked about it again. But with my parents, that would have never happened. That wouldn't have been an option. Yeah.
And like a lot of the time too, I remember that my mom was actually the first person that I told about things. So, and it's interesting now looking back at the things that I told my mom, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I told you that. Like,
yeah.
I would tell her things the way that you would like write them down in a diary. Like I would like the things that I was thinking and feeling, and it helped me to make good decisions as a teen too. And it also helped like to keep me safe in situations, because my mom also talked back to me. She told me, and you're not going to stop your teen from having fun, or you're not going to stop them from making friends. They're going to make friends. They're going to go out with their friends and do things. And they get that little bit of, yeah. And I did sneak out one time, and I remember this, and it's funny because, and I'm scared of the dark. I'm scared of everything. I was not going far, but
Right.
I wanted to sneak out. Everybody had snuck out. And
everybody else is doing it.
And there is some element to that where like,
yeah,
doing this thing that you kind of want to try and do. And I had nice friends. I had good friends. And I was like, well, I want to sneak out, but I'm not going anywhere. It's dark. Like, I'm not
Right.
staying. So I snuck out to my own backyard, and my friends met me there. And the first person I told, I woke up and literally told my mom the next day. I was like, okay, I snuck out last night.
Into the backyard.
My backyard.
And see, when I was a teenager, I wasn't just sneaking out. I was sneaking out and like riding around all night. And like, I was in, like, looking back, it actually almost makes me want to cry. So many dangerous situations that I ended up in that if my girls were in, I don't even know how I would handle it. And no one ever believes that my girls don't lie and sneak out and do those things. And when I try to ask them why, they're just like, we just don't need to. We don't need to. We watched a movie the other day, some teenage love movie thing. And my middle daughter was like, why does she sneak boys in? Why doesn't she just ask her mom, hey, can he come over? I was like, girl, all parents are not that understanding when they're growing up in their adolescence. A lot of parents are like, no dating till you're 18, no this, no that. And I honestly think because my kids had educational topics, piercings, tattoos, dating, those things, that's why they're holding off, because we have open conversations about them. They don't have to lie. They can ask me questions. And so far, they're making really good choices. We haven't had any of those things happen. But me, on the other hand, my teenage existence was, I put my parents through it. I put them through it. Yeah.
And but like that, exactly what you said, when you feel like you have no other choice, like, and the other thing that it helped too is that my mom was always really involved. And my friends also felt really comfortable with my mom too. So they would be telling her all sorts of things too, that she knew everything. She knew, what everybody was into, everybody's clothes like that they liked, and their music.
Yeah.
Also, like, she really encouraged everybody's like unique style.
I love that.
So, I remember now, like, looking back at some of the outfits that I was wearing and stuff, and I'm like, oh, and my mom hyped me up. Like, why would she do that?
Why would she lie to me? Last night, one of Jacob's good friends texted me and he's like, Miss Allison, I just really need to talk. Can we talk for a minute? I was like, sure. So her friends come and talk to me about stuff too. And that, it makes me feel so good, because when you're a teenager and you have no adult to talk to, no safe place, you end up in those situations because you're lying and making bad choices. You don't have anyone to go to except for other 14-year-olds or 16-year-olds or whatever. And that's when dangerous things happen.
Because you don't want your kids, because kids are very easily influenced by their peers.
Yes.
Whether or not we want to believe that, or we think that we can somehow be like, that we can change, that their peers will have any influence on them. We can't, because a lot of the teenage existence is you're finding yourself. You're trying not to be embarrassed every single day of your life over one thing or another, like
it's true.
And so it's not that we can't stop those things. We can't completely stop our kids wanting their peers' approval and to some capacity, or to fit in some way, or to find friends. But we can make sure that we are also there, that we are also a voice of reason for them, that we also have some influence, able to talk to us openly.
Yeah. And I think when my kids ask me things, and I also think they respect my no's or whatever, when they ask me things, because I generally do say yes to things, because they ask for, it's nothing I have to say no to. But the few times I have not felt comfortable, I still listen to them. I still heard them out. Tell me what you think is going to be so fun. Like, what do you think it's going to be like? And the specific time I can remember, she wanted to go somewhere that I did not feel was safe for her. And I said, look, I understand why it sounds like a lot of fun. I understand why you really want to go, but here are my concerns. Can I tell you? And she was a little irritated, but she didn't get upset. And the next day she's like, my friends told me what happened there and exactly what you were scared of did. I'm so glad I didn't go. So I really think they respect our no's or that more when we hear them out and listen. And when we're not, no, of course you're not going to do that. Why would you even ask me that? When you meet them with that, they don't really want to come ask you things again. You know what I mean? And that's when they're like, okay, well, I'll just lie and go do what I want to do anyway.
And what's so interesting about that is I actually remember one of the times that my mom had said no to something and I got really upset about it. And now and then when I was looking back, I was like, oh my God, she was so right. Like she was so right about that thing. It was going to the movies with this one boy, and she
Yeah.
didn't want to go to with this particular kid to the movies, and she had her reasons and why, and I was like so angry about it. And then like a week and a half later, I was like, I can't believe I wanted to go to the movies with that boy.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Mom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
I think it's understanding that even though we want to guide them, it's just even as far as friendships go, I lied about who I was friends with, whose house I was going to. And I think with my kids, they have had friends I have not cared for, and I could already see like toxic behaviors and that they were going to hurt my kids. Like I already knew, but I didn't say, do not be friends with that person. I said, can I tell you some concerns, just some things I see in this friend? And then you make your choice. You're old enough to make a choice on who you want to be friends with. And I would tell them, and I kid you not, within a week or two, they weren't even friends with that person anymore. And I honestly think it's because once I put that in their mind, they were starting to analyze the behaviors too. And so now they're so careful about who they're friends with, and they don't accept less than, they deserve from people. And I always did. I accepted toxic friendships and not nice behavior and things like that. And my kids don't. And that makes me really proud.
yeah. And I think the other thing too, when we're talking about lying, is it starts when they're little. So even with my
Yes.
own kids, one thing that and my kids are little, is that they really value the fact that they tell the truth, that they can be counted on to tell the truth. And that's because that's something that's really big for me. And I'm truthful with them. I don't
Yes.
lie to them. I don't tell them like, oh, we can do this later, and then we don't do it later. Or I don't do those little lies to them.
Yep.
Um, because that's another thing that we model for our kids.
Keeping your word is so important. And that's another thing that I mean, I know my parents didn't do it on purpose. It wasn't really my dad, it was my mom, but she broke promises to me constantly. I think she was overwhelmed with 4 kids and all kinds of it's not that I think she did it purposely, but she did break a lot of promises to me when I was younger. And that's why with my kids now, when they were little, if I didn't know if we could do something, I would say that I'm not sure. But when I have a definite answer, I will let you know. And now with my kids, when they come to me with something and my eyes are like, I'm like, can you just give me a few minutes to think about it? I don't just say no, because I need to make sure it's not my mama bear, like being too overprotective. I need to make sure I'm making a rational decision, and I don't want to switch it. I don't want to say no. And then they try to, well, why not? Just come on. And then I'm like, fine, just go ahead. Cause that just sets you up for them to push you harder and harder and harder, instead of just taking a moment to think about it and really thinking about your answer and then explaining why. And I think that makes a big difference.
I also think when kids are little, we set them up to lie a lot. So like unintentionally, of course,
Yeah.
but like if your kid didn't brush your teeth, how many people go, they didn't brush them, and then
Right.
brush your teeth, and then the kid has no choice, because what are their 2 options? They either
Yep.
have to admit to not doing something that they knew that they were supposed to do,
Yeah.
or or they have to potentially get in trouble. There's no
Yep. No good option.
yeah, exactly. You feel like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
So like, okay, well, yeah, I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of just saying, hey, I know you didn't brush your teeth this morning. Do you want to do that real quick, or do you need help, or something like that?
Exactly. Or they'll be, and there's so many opportunities when kids are little that those things come up, and it's not even necessarily intentional on the kid's part.
Yeah, no. Mm-hmm.
Because they're little, they're still navigating all these care tasks and all these things and creating these habits. And that's when we start asking all of these questions. Did you put your clothes in the hamper? Did you do this? But they're still creating these habits. They're like
Yes.
5, 7, and they're not always going to get it right, even if they mostly get it right.
Yeah.
And you also don't want them to feel like, okay, I got it right 6 times this week, and the one time I did, now I'm in trouble for it.
Right.
It's unfair.
Yeah.
And when kids feel that something is unfair, they're more likely to lie to try to get out of it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's and the other thing too is that lying doesn't seem like a big deal with little kids. It seems like, oh, these cute, funny little lies. But when kids grow up, it's an enormous safety issue.
Absolutely.
And even my kids, they're old enough to where they can play in another room without me. Not so much my 3-year-old, like he can like watch TV or something, but
yeah.
but I kind of have to supervise, of course, like he's, little. But my older kids can play, outside in the backyard or whatever. And if something goes wrong, I don't want them sitting there making up a story, trying to figure out what's going to get them in the least amount of trouble.
Exactly.
I want them to tell me whatever it was that happened, and they can trust me with that information, and they don't have to sit there being like, okay, well, we'll tell her that we did this and then
Exactly.
no, because a lot of times we react to little kids very harshly when they're making mistakes or an accident happens or they spill something or like,
yeah,
hold that would too, I told you to be careful.
And look what you did. I heard a rabbi the other day actually on TikTok say it was so profound, even though it's so simple. He said, if my daughter ever gets in trouble, I don't want her first thought to be, oh shit, my dad's going to find out. I want her first thought to be, I need to call my dad. And that was always my goal too, for my kids to know it doesn't matter what you did. It doesn't matter what happened. Call me and I will be there with no judgment. We don't have to talk about it that night. We'll deal with it later. Just tell me and I'll come and help you. I don't ever want them to fear my reaction with things, because not only do I know how painful it is, I know how many unsafe situations I was in from lying, feeling like I had to lie to do what I wanted. So, yeah.
It's something that I learned from, I think it was the TikTok advocate on TikTok, is that knowing that kids lie to their parents is a powerful tool that people who want to do harm to our kids can easily use. So they can easily say something to our kids. A lot of times they'll say something like, oh, don't tell your mom, she'll be really mad at you, and the kid believes that. They believe that their parent would be really mad because something bad just happened.
Yeah.
And they've associated something bad happening, even if it wasn't their fault, like an accident or mistake, with punishment in the past.
Yeah.
So they believe that. And that's another reason that I do want my kids to know that they can trust me with anything. And even if somebody tells you, oh, your mom would be mad if she knew about this, I want my kids to know without question that I wouldn't be. That could be used against my kids.
And that goes for lying and safety with the internet, because I remember when my girls first started having their phones 24/7, like I've never checked them since they've had them. And I think they were 12 or 13 when that started. Before then, we had phone check-ins. I had them at night, things like that when they were little. They still came to me when someone sent them something inappropriate, even if they weren't sure. They said, Mom, I don't know how to take this. What do you think about what he said or she said? Do you think this is, and we would talk about it, but they came to me with it. I would have never gone to my parents. I mean, I didn't have cell phones then, but I would have never gone to my parents with something like that, because number one, I know I probably would have been blamed. Why were you even on that chat? Why were you, I already knew what was going to come from that. And that's another thing. Online safety and lying is a huge thing in 2022 now too.
And I don't remember really navigating this as much when I was a teen, because I didn't, we didn't have smartphones. We didn't have picture phones. We didn't have social media. I mean, I think maybe some in college, I think, is when social media first came about, like Facebook and whatever, but we weren't utilizing it the way we are today.
Right.
And I know some people talk about being in like Omegle,
yeah.
and stuff like that, but I really wasn't in those things, so I don't have memories of like navigating that.
Right. Yeah.
That people talk about. But it is a lot to think about now as a parent, is the aspect, and how comfortable are your kids talking to you about these types of things, because it becomes really important, because so much of our kids' lives could be where we don't see it,
Yeah.
when they're teens, and
then it becomes a vicious cycle of lying and shame, because if something like that does happen and they lie about it because they don't want the consequence, then they feel shame. And what does shame do? It takes your self-esteem down. So then you're more prone to allowing those behaviors. That's kind of what happened to me. I felt shame for lying, but I had to lie because I didn't want to get in trouble. And I slowly started accepting behaviors that I should not have been accepting. And I think it's just a big downward spiral, but it's very, say your kid just turned 13 or 14 and the parents like, my child started acting out. I have no idea what happened. Just all of a sudden a switch flipped and they're this crazy person. But that's not true. They've had 12 or 13, 14 years to get to where they are now. They could have, the trauma could be hitting them now. It could be peer pressure. So that's what I'm saying. When we just punish the lie instead of getting to the root of it and working it out together, that's when all the dangerous things happen.
Mm-hmm. And also, my sister, I think I told you this, when she hit her teen years, she went through a really hard time.
Mm-hmm.
Schools, tore her ACL, like, all these things, and hormones were like hit her real hard.
Yeah.
I have to assume. And I remember even then, my mom wasn't always like saw it from my sister's perspective. She was like, I just always felt so bad for her. Like, she always saw it as like somebody struggling versus, somebody acting out or
Yes.
being terrible.
When I see one of my teenagers, they're 16, 17, and 18, when I see one of them sad or a little more withdrawn, my first instinct is, how can I support you and how can I help you? Or if they have a little attitude that day, they're just a little, maybe they're just having a bad day. That doesn't mean they need to be punished for it, because they're human. They have struggle days too. And it's really how we handle those small moments that let them know that they're safe with us when they're struggling or whatever, having a bad day. They can come to us with it.
And so many people will hear my stories and be like, oh, my mom would have done this, or my parent, I wouldn't have lived through that, or blah, blah, blah. And the thing is too, and then they try to make it seem like that's how it should have been handled. The situation should have been handled, but we're all adults now. And
right.
We all grew up, and it turns out that you actually didn't need to, I didn't need to be physically punished for any of that stuff, because if I did, it would still be affecting me today. Like, somewhere in my mind, I would be thinking like, man, I really wish I would have been beat for that or whatever.
Right.
Not once in my adult life have I ever looked back on any of those situations or those things and thought, oh, I really wish somebody
would have spanked me more. Yeah.
Not one time. I look back on so much of my life and I'm like, man, I am so glad that I had the mom that I did that met me with understanding and patience, and because my life,
and it's tiring. It's tiring, Jess, when you are respectful, gentle parenting, whatever you want to call it. It is exhausting. It can be exhausting, because not only am I working through all of my own traumas and getting out of habits that I've had my whole life so that my kids don't have them, but I'm also learning an individual relationship with each one of my children. And our household was ran the same way, because we're the kids, you're the parents, it was ran the same. My children could not be more different. They could not be more different. And I really believe having that individual relationship with them too cuts down on them feeling the need to lie, because they have that relationship with me where they can talk to me alone and get my point of view on things. And I really think a lot of respect is built inside of that too. Like, my kids respect me. We don't yell at each other. We don't do any of that. But yeah, I think things snowball. And then once you're there, the parents like, how did we get here? But they forget all of the years that formed all of those behaviors, before that.
Well, speaking of it being like really difficult, and like difficult even looking back, like it was really like I told you what my dad said when he found out that there's like melatonin gummies available for kids now, because I had all those sleep issues.
Yes.
About that, and he was like, I would have mortgaged my house to be able to get my hands on something like that when you were a kid. And I was like, it wasn't that bad, like all those years of sleep issues. And he's like, it wasn't that bad. It was a living nightmare, Jessica.
I had that too. I don't know specifically about your sleep issues, but I think I had that too. I can remember crawling in my parents' room to lay on the floor because I was having such bad anxiety in my room. Like, I would crawl in their room. I knew every squeak in the hallway. I'm like, my dad's going to kill me. My dad's going to kill me. Did you do that?
I used to, because they went through this time where but they tried all these different things. God love them. They tried different things. And then at one point they both decided okay, she's just not there. We're just going to say it. Like, she's not allowed in our room, and we're not going to go in her room. And we're going to try that. And when they did that, I would crawl in and I would go under their bed.
I felt, but you know what? I still remember that feeling of when I finally made it in the bedroom and laid down. I felt so safe. Yeah. And I remember that with my kids, because one of my kids struggled with sleeping stuff ever since they were an infant. And I really remember that she just wants that comfort, that deep breath of mom's here and I'm okay. So because it's a lot when you're a parent, and you're trying to, have time with your partner or whatever. And it's like, mom, I'm here. Oh shoot. My dog bark. Hoya, that was me. Shh. I'll never do that again. Hoya, look. Hey, that was me here. Okay, I think she's done.
And it's not like you can handle every situation perfect, right? Because
Right.
for being a gentle or respectful parent or whatever you call it, does not mean that you are a perfect parent.
Right.
And because so much of it is knowing your kids as individuals, which means
Yeah.
that there is going to be trial and error in getting to know your kid and what works for them and what works for you and them together as an individual person. And that means that there's gonna be some error, and you're not
Yeah.
gonna do exactly.
But the difference is when we know we've made a mistake, we go, and like I did to my daughter the other day, I said, look, I did not handle that well. I am so sorry I reacted that way. And I want to hear you out. Let's talk about it. That instead of just, well, I screwed up, I'll try something different next time. I really feel like when we discuss those things with our kids, it's modeling how to handle things when you make a mistake, or it's modeling when you say something unkind, how to handle it and to go apologize and to be genuine in it. Yeah. Okay, I think that's a good place to wrap up. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you next Friday.